everybody. Welcome. Welcome back for some of you. Welcome here probably for the first time for a good many of you. So thanks everybody for coming. This is, I feel like I'm looking out at a lot of depressed angels because this is the end of the Jewels in the Wasteland series. So for this year, we're showing an encore of this, but it won't be the whole thing with the discussion and everything. So this is a really special series that we're so proud of. But we're also proud of all these millions of other series that we do throughout the year. So you're going to watch this, you're going to have a great time, you're going to enjoy it. But then we're also here tomorrow and the day after doing all kinds of amazing stuff. And we want you there. If you have the great taste to be here at an event like this, then you have exactly the kind of taste we're looking for. So pick up a calendar and check out a lot of the great stuff that we've got coming up. It's been an incredible success. AFS has been around for 32 years. We opened the cinema, and people have just been swarming in to watch great films, and it's a heartening thing. Sometimes you look around and culture. Where's culture? Is culture really thriving? Actually, yes, it is. In places like this. I don't recommend going to Tulsa, but here it's thriving. And the big mover and shaker who's made this series go more than anybody, of course, is AFS founder and artistic director and programmer of this series, and all-around incredible movie introducer who's going to come up and blow your mind with his... He's going to introduce the movie, all right? Richard Linklater.
Oh, thank you, Lars. And let me second what Lars was saying. Yes, come here every night. You just show up, and we are showing great movies all the time, every day of the week. We are so proud of this place. How many of you are seeing Wings of Desire for the first time? That's a lot. That's great. Well, this is a good, I thought, the perfect film to end this multi-year series on. I mean, it's just an iconic 80s movie. It's just such a big film in a lot of people's lives who saw it for the first time back then. I'll never forget the first time I saw this. Allow me to digress here and tell the story. I was, 3 years into running the Film Society. We had just kind of shown way too many films in the spring of '88. I was totally burnt out. If you ever look through AFS film history, look how many films we did that time. We had got a little grant money for the first time, and I just went crazy and showed so many films. And I was like, screw it, I'm taking the summer off. Just give me a break. I've been doing this 3 straight years. And a buddy of mine was hanging sheetrock up in Connecticut. So I said, let's drive up there. I'm going to spend time in New York and couch surf, whatever. So we drove up there in my old Cutlass. I didn't know you're not really supposed to have a car in New York City. But I drove up, and I'll never forget just being in New York City, really for the first time, and driving down. And I drove up outside the Lincoln Plaza Theater. That's still there, my much beloved Lincoln Plaza Theater. Found a parking place miraculously right there on the street. Pulled in, went in, and watched Wings of Desire. Now the anticipation for this movie was incredible. I mean, Wim Wenders was like a god to myself and every cinephile of this era. He could do no wrong. The 70s and 80s, just one great film after another. He was, I just loved everything he did. But it had been a few years. He had made Paris, Texas came out in '84, and that was such a revelation. But it had been about 4 years, and it's like he'd been trying to get this other film made until the end of the world, which he did next. But I think that had trouble maybe getting financing or whatever, very complex film. So he just did this film. He returned to Germany. He had been out of Germany. Famously, he'd been in the U.S. for 10 years. And then, so this is his big triumphant return to Germany. He makes this film that is just a beautiful Valentine to Berlin pre-unification. So you'll see a lot of Berlin Wall in this movie. It's very much, of that moment. But this film is just, it's gorgeous, it's poetic, it's, I love it because of I haven't seen it in a long time. I saw it about 3 times back then, so I'm very curious to see what I feel about it now. Like any returning to a great novel or a poem, something you haven't consumed in a while, I'll be curious how I feel. But you know, if you had to break the film down in two halves, and I don't know if it's exactly that time-wise, but the first half really intrigued me the most. It's really just, you're with these two angels, Bruno Ganz and Otto Sadler. They play these, you know, it's, I guess the genre we might call it in guardian angel films, but it's a very German version of that, you know, like, you know, Heaven Can Wait, or Here Comes Mr. Jordan, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, famously. You know, it's a great plot shtick, right, for any movie narrative to have angels intervening in our lives. You know, something kind of primordial about that. But this is these guys, and they're in trench coats and hairs and ponytails. I guess that's the angel look. But they just, the German title of this is, I believe, Angels Over Berlin. And they really are literally over. They're just kind of observing. They're helping humans where they can, kind of spiritually, I think. They can hear thoughts and internal monologues and just the mundane aspects of life. It's both the big, profound questions and the little mundane things. They're just observing. And the second half, I think, Bruno Gantz's angel, he starts yearning to be human. Like, apparently it's an option. You can do that. You can opt out of your angelhood and come down to earth. So he's falling in love with this lonely French trapeze artist. So it's a beautiful love story, but he just wants to be human, to feel things, to taste, to feel, to love, you know. So it's this wonderful contemplation of just what it means to be human, you know, to live in the moment, to the essence of being human. And so that's the kind of the second part. So it sort of shifts, but the first part is just ambient. It's almost like a piece of music. You're just hanging with the angels, and it's really beautiful. And even then, the story, it's really not, you know, it's like I said, it's this kind of art film, but in the capital A sense, you know. That's why it really blows people's minds, because it's like you're having this kind of deep experience you can't totally explain, because it's certainly not a traditional story by any means. But, you know, it is beautiful. Just hang with it. It's a little long. Don't, you know, just give yourself over to it like you would any great piece of art. I don't think there's too many. Does anyone here not know who Peter Falk is? Raise your hand if you don't know who Peter Falk. That's okay. Everybody knows. Okay, everybody's watching Columbo reruns. I was just wondering if a new generation didn't know who he was, to say, oh, he's playing himself. Columbo, doing a film over there. And also there's some great, you know, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, you know, show up at the end. I like the way it shifts from, at the beginning, it's just this beautiful score. And then as he becomes more and more human, it gets a little more rock and roll, you know. It's Crime in the City Solution, it's Australian rock band, and then beautiful band, and then Nick Cave toward the end. So it's a great record of that. And we'll be around after to just talk about it and hear what you have to think. So I think the film just asks us to, you know, question ourselves constantly. Yeah, hear the questions that it asks of you about your own lives, you know. So that's what I always felt about it. So just give yourself over to it and enjoy this movie, and we'll be up after to have a discussion. So thanks for being here. All right.
We didn't make the film, you know.
Yeah, thank you.
So we were just talking, and I was saying, like, I just sat there and I was just 18 years old again from the first time that I saw that film. It really is this sort of, it takes you, because it's so much about time and timelessness and going into and out of time. I was just transported.
It's a fun
It was
film
great.
to have a long-term relation with, that's for sure. I was, you forget, because it's kind of, well, you know, a lot of things don't connect to other things. It's really, you know, so you forget in a certain way. But you revisit some characters, like the little kid standing against the wall alone. I said, oh, I like that kid so much, you know. the guy who goes into his mother's apartment, you know, you're just like, oh yeah, you know, people you felt something for once, a long time ago. It's beautiful. Yeah, so.
Were there any Yeah.
I just remember stories about its making, like Solveig Del Martin, who plays Marion, the trapeze. Like she actually joined or she trained for 4 months or something to be a trapeze artist. And at the end, she said if she couldn't act anymore, she could always do that. Like they were offering her jobs and stuff. So, but I don't know, what is it? Trapeze artists in that day, it's like Cirque du Soleil has really changed the game there so much. It's like, you're seeing them swinging back and forth. They're like, oh, that's great. Yeah.
You can't really make a in 1988.
Yeah,
you could make a
better
living
up
as a
your game.
trapeze artist, I guess.
Yeah, or whatever that is. So it's funny. And the
So-
Alacon Circus, an homage to the cinematographer. He was old then. Henri Alacon, who had shot famously Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. Had a long career.
Port of Shadows he shot.
Yeah. Roman Holiday. And even in the 80s, he had shot a Raul Ruiz film we had shown, on Top of the Whale. So he was still busy, but he was old. He had done, with vendors, he had done State of Things. I think another, black and white movie. So, they had a good relationship here, but it was one of his, I think, maybe one of his last films.
Yeah, but he, who had been around so long, wasn't as old as Kurt Bois, who plays the
Yeah.
old man in the library,
storyteller. Yeah.
who had started in films in 1908.
As a kid. Yeah, he was born around the turn of the century,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have him, walking around, the storyteller. He'd been in Casablanca, a bunch of things, famous. Peter Falk, he's so, you would believe him as an angel. I mean, he's so beloved, he's kind of the perfect one. I remember vendors saying he wanted someone that everyone knew, that would be, you wouldn't have to, and like Peter Falk, he liked him, of course, from the Cassavetes films, but I mean, he was really known as Columbo, so such a great little.
And even in Germany, like,
Yeah.
he would just be able to walk down the street. I totally feel that. I believe that must be true.
Yeah.
That he would walk down the street and people would feel comfortable enough saying, "Hey, Lieutenant."
Yeah, Lieutenant. Yeah, he's such a.
It would be a good
Yeah.
homage in some other
Great
film to
guy.
have somebody just have a character just as in kind of like a flyby, somebody saying, I can't see you, but I know you're there. I wish I could see your face.
Yeah, I know you're there.
Hello, compadre.
Yeah,
Or
Compañero.
Compañero, yeah.
Compañero.
That'd be a great little
What does
homage.
that mean the second time he does it, and the other angel's not giving him, he's not buying?
Well, it
But
may
he says
be.
the same thing. So what does that mean?
It may be that that in a way this is sort of an allegory about different kinds of filmmakers, because the two angels are two different kinds of filmmakers. I'm just thinking about what this may be. When I watch a movie, I'm always kind of like trying. It's a play of symbols, and I'm trying to sort of understand it. In this time, I was sort of having a reading that may or may not be total bullshit. That like it's a movie about filmmaking and the angels, because an angel observes from the outside like a filmmaker. And it's about filmmakers who take two different courses. The two angels are filmmakers who take two different courses. And Bruno Gans' angel, he becomes a filmmaker
Jumps
who becomes absorbed by stories and people.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
And a remake, yeah.
Because it says at the end to be continued, and a remake, which I never saw, the American.
Yes, City of Angels. No, I never saw it either. Imagine how awful it must be.
I don't know. Did anybody see it? Who's in that?
Nicolas Cage, who's great.
And
Yeah.
Meg Ryan. So
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, it could be good,
I
but
don't know.
you get out.
Just
No way. It's good.
Americanizations of international films just typically you sort of kind of go but I like the Breathless remake way back.
Yeah, but
an
that's not
80s,
even
good
a
80s.
remake, really. It's just
Or
it's
an
its own movie.
Americanization, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the poetry of couldn't translate. I don't know. This is very German too. But
So did you find anything new in this viewing, which must be you must have seen this 5 or 6 or more times?
but really back then, I think I saw it 3 or 4 times in a 2-year period when it came out, and then I really haven't seen it since.
Yeah.
So I was curious about it, and I'll be honest, I haven't really liked Vender's narrative since this.
Yeah.
I hate to say, because I don't know if my admiration was maybe too big at the time, if that's possible. I remember he was hanging around Houston a lot when I was there. He had done a retrospective. He was there kind of scouting locations for Paris, Texas. He was there that night with Dennis Hopper and things like that. So he was in Houston a lot. And the Museum of Fine Arts did a retrospective, and I saw all those old, 70s, all those road movies. Kings of the Road, Alice in the Cities is still one of my favorite films. Wrong Move, Goalie's Anxiety at the Penalty Kick, all those great movies. And then, they were premiering State of Things around that time. And I got really hooked and just so, Paris, Texas was so great, and then this was so great. And then I guess it was the next one, Until the End of the World, the thing he had worked on for so long. I remember seeing it and just kind of going, wait, something's not, I don't know. Does everybody like that movie a lot, Until the End of the World? I heard there's a longer cut of it I haven't seen.
The long cut's better. I mean, it's interesting.
But I kind of said interesting, but it didn't quite land for me. And then Far Away So Close, the sequel to this. Did you like that, Mark? You haven't seen it? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's actually a sequel. I mean, they're together. I don't remember much of it. I remember just not kind of going, what's not, I don't know. It was like biting off too much or like, I don't know. I don't know. It's like he had the answers all of a sudden. Like his films up to that point to me were questions and kind of explorations of unknown. And then somehow I felt I was being preached to at some point. Like he had found answers he was going to impart to me. So I don't know.
But on the other hand, his docs got incredible. Like,
then he started making these docs that are all great. Yeah, kind of like Herzog, I don't think Herzog's fallen off in his narrative ability, but his docs are great too. What is it about those Germans? They're very good at docs.
Yeah.
It's rare someone makes good docs and narratives. But
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and features. But Herzog's certainly the most prolific. The Wenders are beautiful. He's so talented. He's a great photographer too. I've been around him a couple times. He's always snapping pictures, or he was back then. I don't think anymore. But great photographer, kind of like an Eagleston kind of landscapes, and just great eye, really beautiful. But where were we? Sorry, I was like, he's
So the sequel, you've seen it?
This was the end. Yeah, I remember seeing it, but I don't remember much of it. I kind of battled it a little bit. So I was hoping that wasn't informing any of this screening. I was trying to do what you did successfully, go back to that point, retrieve that, to me, the 27-year-old who was watching this for the first time. So I don't know if I'm a little less romantic or what. It was just, I found, unfortunately, my rational mind kicked in a little bit. I was sort of like, you can't happen, with a story like this.
I'm so sorry.
Angels can only see in black and white? What?
Oh.
You can see everything? And then it was like, wait, you've been here forever since the glaciers were melting, but you were human form, but you still can't see in color? I don't know. It's just, I was battling some of the choices.
It's a little sad.
Not fair.
It's sad that happened, actually.
It's sad. I don't know what kicked it. Not completely. I totally enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah.
I just I don't know.
But it would be like picking up a Jack Kerouac book and reading it now. It wouldn't be fair to the book exactly,
But I've done that with and I would say the overwhelming number of films in this film series have been like, oh my God, last week's film, The Dead, I was like, that is better than I ever even remembered.
So true.
A similar film I hadn't seen.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm still coming down from that. That was really profound.
Yeah.
Maybe Wenders and Peter Hanke can't quite compete with John Huston and James Joyce, but I don't know. Still great.
It's good to see him try.
Yeah, no, you got to admire it. It's so ambitious, this film.
Another thing I was thinking when watching this movie was like, boy, it really is fortuitous for this film's like long-term like reputation and appreciation that they chose Nick Cave in The Bad Seeds and not like Bruce Hornsby or something.
Yeah, not that he's bad, but you got to hand it to good old 35mm film to capture, when you see The Girl Can't Help It or something. If you want to see Eddie Cochran or Little Richard sing in beautiful 35mm, or even just such a great record. So to see a young Nick Cave, I remember being in those two club scenes are fantastic.
Yeah.
It feels exactly like what it was. I remember going to Berlin for the first time in 1990, just a few years after this, and driving around, seeing that Angel, being there and going to a club and going, I'm in Wings of Desire. The wall had just come down. It looked just like that. The wall was still there, but it was down. You could go across. It was unbelievable. And that's true. Graffiti on the western side, the other side just clean. You could spot all the East Germans because they all had like a VCR under their arm and was heading, they were just buying shit. They were like, give me that, give me that. The wall had just come down a few months before. It was an incredible time to be there.
Wait, 33 RPM records? What is this?
Yeah. It was great. And then I remember being in exact spots, like a church, and then went back. That was 90. Went back in 95, and it's the same church, and there's like a Bennigan's right next to it, because East Germany looked the same. You could get over there, and it looked like the Allies had just left. It was just crumbled, and it still had that feel, that Germany Year Zero feel. So much of it, but then now you can't even tell that it's just one big. But what a transformation of a city. But this film captures it. It's such a great Valentine to Berlin, and you can feel the love.
I wonder if we have any questions or
just
contributions
comments,
from the audience. Yeah. Yeah,
It's always a big
how
choice.
contemporary music plays.
It's always a choice. You're risking dating yourself, and which is okay. I think a lot of films do that very intentionally, like a Billy Wilder film, all local references, and I think things with time, you maybe don't get all of it, but you get that they all know it. Or a Preston Sturges film, they can be still very effective. Yeah, and other things, it can really kind of leave you there at a certain time and not carry it, to the future. So I think pretty good choices here. I think Nick
definitely.
Cave, he chose correctly. Nick Cave was living in Berlin at this time, but what an artist, what a great performer, singer, writer, thinker. It's awesome.
100 years from now, even then, 100 years, probably nobody, who knows if people know who Nick Cave is? I don't know, who knows? But people will look at that and go,
I think so.
People go, that's awesome.
Yeah, like whatever that was, that looks pretty.
Yeah, right.
Pretty cool spot.
Who else has a question or contribution? Right over here, yeah.
I like that it kind of documents that time where the wall, and I don't think anyone making this film had any idea the wall would be down so quickly after. I mean, no one did. But you can feel the film kind of yearning for reunification, It's a wonderful little timepiece that way. Maybe in the long run, that'll just be a little, it's now been more time since the wall came down to now, or since this film was made, than it was the wall was ever even up. 60 to 90, basically, 30 years. So add 100 more years to that, and it'll be a little blip in time.
Are the two angels the two Germanys? Anyway, I don't know.
There are these polarities, the whole movie. It's spirit, the flesh. It's you got choices.
I like that it's like a little bit sort of hard to read. Like it's that it never really resolves a lot of these things.
I like that the angels hang out at the library a lot. That's cool. That's where it's going on. That's where
Who else has a question or contribution in the audience here? Yes, right over here.
The novelist, and he worked with Ben a couple times before. He wrote Goalie's Anxiety. He wrote Wrong Move for him, and still with us, novelist, playwright. Spent time in Vienna. He's a major figure there. More controversial since the 90s. He got in a little trouble with the Serbian-Croatian. They thought he was on the wrong side of that. I don't know. Because he's really the poet here, right? Did he not write? He was sending a lot of the dialogue. I'm not sure his process with vendors, like who wrote what, but I was to understand he wrote a lot of
the poetic narration.
Yeah, and what a great narrative device. Like those kind of thoughts have no place in most movies because it's not hinged to anything. But what a great free device. I think once Vendors had that in mind, he says, "Oh, Peter, have I got something for you to help me with? That thing you do so well, we'll do a whole movie of that." I heard they were shooting. It's pretty loose, like they didn't really always know it. Like he's sending them stuff overnight, and they're working it in the next day. And because a lot of that's going to be voiceover, they could, like the shoot didn't look like conventional shoot. I don't think a lot of people working on it had any idea what the final form would be. You can kind of imagine looking at the movie. It must have felt pretty chaotic. And Peter Falk talked about that too, famously. Kind of what he says on the plane at the very beginning is probably what he was thinking at that point. Like, I don't have any idea what this is going to be. So, and so he improv'd a lot. I'm sure that hat scene was improv.
Oh yeah.
You know, and the scene where he's standing there with her when he meets her and he's got his coffee, she even kind of breaks. She sort of smiles awkwardly, like I can tell he just kind of like threw him into that a little bit, I assume.
Is it
sweet?
Is it a tricky, like, you improvise a little bit sometimes? You'll like change up the way people say things in your films, right?
Yeah, but not usually on camera.
Yeah.
You know, like rehearse
rehearsal,
that.
yeah.
It felt like they were really just meeting for the first time or something.
Where they're talking over each other and stuff.
Yeah, or she doesn't know what, she's kind of letting him talk and smiling kind of awkwardly.
Yeah.
But she's met a celebrity. It's Columbo. So it makes sense, maybe.
Little kids, Columbo. Yeah. I wonder if maybe we have one or two other
just
contributions.
Observations.
Yeah. Just anything. Just throw it in. You can, as you can tell, we're playing this pretty loose. Right over here. And to just, in case, just for everybody to know, in 1988, color film was very available. You were definitely making a choice to go black and white. It was like, well, let's save a little money.
Yeah. The film does effortlessly and beautifully switch between black and white and color. That's kind of a tough move quite often, but this film does it better than most that have tried that.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Oh, the list goes on and on.
But to go back and forth a lot is kind of cool.
So we've reached the end of the 80s, which is sad. We'll be back. We'll be back with more 80s because we're not going to go to the 90s. We already talked about this, right?
Too recent.
Yeah. It feels too recent. Yeah. So we'll come back with the 80s. In the meantime,
80s and back. But
grab a calendar on your way out to see all the great things we've got coming up at Austin Film Society. And Rick,
seriously,
thank you for showing us the 1980s.
Thank you for coming tonight. This was really wonderful, guys. So.
Thanks, everybody.